Micron is a stock that has done very well over the last 5 years. We can see it's up 128%. The S&P 500 is only up about 90% over that same time frame. Small dividend, but it's still there, right? If we zoom out a little bit more, we can see in late 2014, early 2015, it was up from about 30 to 140. So maybe slightly under the S&P 500. However, we're looking at a peak. If we look at values around it, such as 2016 or 2013, right, you would be doing well above the S&P 500. And we can actually see that trend follow that with peaks and valleys. We'll get into that a bit later. One thing you might notice that sticks out, at least to me, 150 PE. That seems very high. However, it's not really indicative of the full situation, as this company was not profitable for a couple quarters. So that doesn't really dictate the full story. And honestly, when you're getting a company that's just coming out of an unprofitable, whether they were for an extended period of time or not, really you shouldn't be looking at that as much as you should revenue growth, right? Now, this forward PE might be more valid because what we're looking at, right? We're looking at actually pretty profitable going forward. However, I think it's mostly important to look at revenue growth over the last 5 to 10 years or so. One thing we see is it's also really sporadic. I like Charles Schwab for many things, but for this stock, it really doesn't tell the full picture. So I found this website here that's covering the revenue, right? This is revenue quarter after quarter. You can see the year-over-year growth as well. You can see a clear upward trend. I mean, this is early 2009, but even if we take this, would probably be 2014, right? $4.5 billion in revenue, $7.5 billion in revenue, 8. So we're basically doubling over that decade, but also becoming a profitable company over that time frame as well. One thing that's interesting is you can see the peaks and the valleys, right? We can also see that in this trend here. So people who sometimes refute the tie of earnings to stocks, and don't get me wrong, some stocks trade a lot in hype, but it's kind of interesting how you can literally see it play out here, right? So it's a really interesting trend, and you don't really see things mapped this clearly out. I mean, I think Micron really highlights the cyclical nature that some semiconductors bring. Some of the larger players in the space, such as AMD and NVIDIA, more so. I mean, both have done really well, right? NVIDIA more so in the last few years. However, they're diversified into enough areas of semiconductors that they don't really taste the cyclicalness as much. However, it is still there, and we're seeing that in gaming and embedded for AMD, right? So, but anyways, this video is not on AMD. So I like Micron. I do. I think it's good. One thing I would be concerned about, right? I'm not saying, just because a trend exists doesn't necessarily mean that it's always 100% going to happen. However, we can see we're on a rise. So in the grand scheme of things, you may want to wait till things are back down again to buy in. Maybe that's you as a long-term hold. It doesn't really matter too much the entry point if you're like holding 5 to 10 years. I mean, it does, but there's no guarantee that it goes back down. However, history would indicate that there may be a cheaper entry point for Micron. However, if you don't want to fret and things like that, I wouldn't worry about it too much, right? I do like the stock. I think what they do is important, right? They do a lot of, you can read about it specifically, but they're one of the largest players in the semiconductor space, right? 115 billion market cap. And the profitability is really intriguing, right? Especially if this forward PE can be actualized into what they are. That is a very cheap product, certainly for a very cheap stock, certainly for a company this large and in this space, right? And we can see basically since 2023, they were not really looking at any profitability. So it's really hard to compare historical PE. And I've covered the fact that non-profitable companies are a lot harder to look at, or you got to dig more deeply into the numbers, and sadly we just don't have enough time in this video specifically. However, I would encourage you heavily to look into specifics of the background, more on the revenue growth and the specific industries they are in, specifically for this one, because the PE, you can't use as much on it, right? Quickly, let's take a look at what some analysts have to say here. Actually, let's go to Schwab first. Usually I like to cover Schwab. Schwab doesn't necessarily like this company too much, at least in the short term over the 1 year performance. They have it in the 83rd percentile, right? It's not great. They probably project it to go flat or down a little bit, but I've seen worse ratings, I guess. But I wouldn't put too much stock into it because there are quite a few analysts that like it, right? all these analysts, it's not all, but 36 of the 39 say buy. One dude's saying underperform. 2 are saying hold. So those people like it, right? We got a buy here, a long here, a buy here, that sort of stuff. So honestly, what I'm looking at with this stock, I don't like to do short-term analysis. However, I think it is really indicative here, right? I want to zoom out one more time. If it loads, it looks like it's going to crash on me. Absolutely love it. But anyways, that trend we're looking at here, right? If this trend continues, right, that's what we're butting up heads against, right? The profitability is really intriguing, right? Certainly that for a PE, if you can get there, that would be phenomenal, right? However, what we're butting heads with is this trend of cyclicalness going to continue? Is it going to take another downturn? Is there going to be another entry point? Because then if you're looking at that, then you're like, well, probably shouldn't be buying here. Let's hold. But if you think it's going to continue, or the forward PE and the profitability is going to drive this higher, buck the trend a little bit. Not that there won't be some rebound, but maybe the valley is going to be higher than the share price here. That's really what I see butting heads with this stock specifically. But I think as a long-term hold, I like Micron. I think it's good. I think it's a good company for the most part. I personally don't own it, but there's much worse stocks you could buy, and this stock is performing pretty well in a pretty key industry. So, but anyways, that's all I got for this video, guys. If you enjoyed, I appreciate if you'd love to like, subscribe if you're new, and if you enjoy the content, I do daily stock content on this channel covering all sorts of stocks and topics. It really helps the channel if you do subscribe, more so than just you getting notifications about it. It helps YouTube know that, hey, people enjoy my content, and YouTube often recommends videos out more after someone subscribes. But anyways, I appreciate all of you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.